Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallama ala nabiyyina Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Allahumma la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Allahumma 'allimna ma yanfa'una wa nafa'na bima tu'allimna wa zidna min fadlika ilman wa ta'liman. إنك على كل شيء قدير ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So Alhamdulillah, we're on session 10 today, and we're on the 18th fast, Alhamdulillah, and we are continuing today our story of Surah Yusuf, and yesterday we looked at the first 25 verses of Surah Yusuf, and we looked at the foundation of this surah. Now, just to do a quick recap, and then we'll continue with the story, because this is a full story, like we looked at yesterday, that it contains all the elements of the story, unlike the other stories which are covered in the Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls this Ahsan al-Qasas, the best of stories. We're going to look at all the verses in this surah, inshallah. So there were many lessons that we learned yesterday. So as a quick recap, I'm going to go over those. And one of the first lessons that we learned from this, because we learned that anybody who looks into this story and reads it, they will find mercy in it and they will find guidance. So no, the first lesson that we learned was never underestimate, excuse me, never underestimate the power of stories, because the Quranic stories are our sacred heritage. And as we are talking about treasures from the Quran, that's our series, we are looking at our heritage in the Quran, and there's all of it is a heritage, but we are picking out some so that we can look at these stories and we can learn the lessons. And also, the intention of doing this series is that we get a taster of the Quran, and then we can keep going back to it on a daily basis and look at these verses and read them and interact with them and draw the lessons from them and really look at them as the word of Allah. Because the Quran is the miracle of it is that it is the word of Allah. Every letter is and every word, every sentence is the word of Allah. So as Muslims, this is our heritage, and we need to interact with it in a very different level than just reading it as as for the virtues of it. We need to start looking at what Allah wants us to do and how He wants us to live in this world. And the Quran, when we read it, that's what it teaches us. So going back to this story, it says never underestimate the power of stories. So this is our sacred heritage, and the lessons contained in it are treasures for us. So if we were to take these lessons and internalize them and practice on them, then they would bring about a personality change. Like it would really take you on another level with your own personality, right? And yesterday we were talking a lot about the human relationships, also as pertain to close family and friends. So we said that you don't need to share all the things that happen to you. So be discreet in what you disclose about yourself. You don't have to tell your story to everybody. You don't have to tell your past to everybody. If you have sinned, then Allah hides it for you. You should look at it like this, that Allah has hidden it for you. So why would you expose it to somebody else, even a person who is very close to you? So we know that about disclosure about things. We learned from this story. We also learned that people can hate us for the good things that we have. And this is where the hasad and the jealousy comes in, hatred and jealousy. And this is very real. It can destroy it can destroy a person, it can destroy a family, it can destroy an entire community. It can destroy a country. That's how strong it is. So first of all, we should be cognizant of it, that it's real, because many people they reject that idea and they say, oh, what power can that have? but it does have a lot of power. It contains a lot of power. So first of all, save yourselves from other people's hatred and jealousy, and there's things you can do to save yourself. Like we mentioned yesterday, that don't go telling people about the good things that you have. Don't incite hatred in them. Um, be polite in your relationship with the person, etc., etc. And then on a personal level, on your own level, don't be jealous of other people, because if other people can be jealous, we can be jealous too. And everybody has felt jealousy, and everybody has felt hatred. So the Sharia even shows us, the Prophet ﷺ has shown us how to counteract these things. And we don't have time to go into it here, but all that knowledge is there that you can learn about. If you have that sickness, you feel jealousy, then what should you do? The other lesson we learned was try to love our children equally. This is from when they're very little to when they grow up, because this can have far-reaching effects on the personality of that child, and also the sicknesses that will come into that child as a result of feeling, just the feeling. It's just a perception. It might not even be real, but if that child perceives or thinks that my mother doesn't love me, or this person doesn't love me, then this can happen too. Uh, we also learned that you can't minimize the pain. uh, we try to minimize the pain by blaming other people. So when we sin, when we do something wrong, then we like to project that onto others. This is a very common human trait, that we project our ills onto other people, and we try to blame other people. If we do something wrong, the first thing is that we take responsibility for ourselves. This is why muhasiba, to be reflective of yourself, is very important. That when you are reflective of yourself, you will always know where you are, and to know where you are is power. People try to avoid this because they don't want to. They don't want to know about themselves too. That if I have this evil trait inside me, if I have this bad trait inside me, if I have a fault inside me, then I don't necessarily need to know it, because I know other people's faults. Right? I can see other people's faults, but I can't see my own. So to be cognizant, to know your own faults, is the first step in changing yourself. And it's very uncomfortable. The process itself is very uncomfortable, because who likes to think that they have this, or they are like this, or they are like that? Nobody wants to think like that. But if you want to change yourself, then the first thing is that you have to own it. You have to know what the faults are inside yourself. And if you have a person who can uh, reflect that back to you, who can tell you your faults, then you have found something very precious. But most people react to that when they're told their faults. We're living in a world when you can't tell uh, anybody their faults. They're very sensitive. Even children are very sensitive. Parents are very sensitive. When something is pointed out to them, they will reject it, and they will shut that door so fast, and they will never talk to that person again. So we have to be a people who are open to knowing and learning our own faults, so that we can reform ourselves. And we have to realize, this is a part of humility. Um, Suddenly, not suddenly, but it's been a gradual progression, that our egos have become so big, our nafs is so great, that we can't take anything that goes against the nafs. So when we are told something about ourselves, or we're told that this might be a problem, or that might be a problem, we have a huge problem with it. So really, our trajectory, the way we're going, is wrong. We're not. In order to be a Muslim, in order to follow the Prophet ﷺ, we have to come down on a certain level. We have to have a certain level of humility. And unfortunately, for Muslims, even religious Muslims, people who deem themselves to be religious, this is a quality which is lacking. This quality of humility is very lacking. So this is something, the self-reformation, the tazkiyah, is something that we need to look at. It's a very real thing that we need to work on if we want to become true Muslims. And we also learned that be careful who you share your fears with or your weaknesses with. Again, this is about sharing. That when you talk to people, who you're talking to, your friends are not your counselors, by the way. Your children are not your counselors. So don't go to these people and try to, talk things through which are too heavy, which they're not going to be able to process well. Maybe they'll make a mess of it. They take it and give it to somebody else, share it with somebody else, which will put you in jeopardy. So be careful who you share things with. and what you say. We talked a lot about the tongue yesterday, that the tongue is a thing which can take you to Jannah or it can take you to Jahannam. So to be able to control your tongue is the first step actually of being able to control yourself. Controlling your tongue in terms of what you say and also what you eat. So the tongue is actually very, your mouth is actually very powerful. It might be one of the smallest organs, but it's very, very powerful. So being understanding that is very important. And we learn you can't always protect the ones that we love. Now we have to do the best that we can. It doesn't mean we leave them to go on the way that they want to go and they're on the road to destruction and we say, oh, I can't protect you. No, we have to do our part. We have to intelligently do our part from the very beginning, and we have to put all the things that we can put in place to protect them. And then too, if Allah chooses, like we've seen in many of the stories of the prophets, that their children and their wives sometimes they were led astray. But this is from Allah, so we have to realize that it is Allah who is in control. Allah is in control of everything, and this is actually La ilaha illallah. To realize that in your life, to actually live La ilaha illallah. To say it is one thing, to live it, to live the La ilaha illallah is to realize all of these things, that Allah is in perfect control. He is the one who holds the reins to everything. He is Al Malik, and He is the one who is in charge of every single thing. Yesterday, we also learned there's no perfect crime, like how the brothers who committed the crime, but Allah exposed them. Um, then we learned about people. We've learned a lot of, in here, we're going to learn a lot of people skills. We've been learning them. Yesterday, we learned them. Today, we're going to do some more. And one of them was do not fall for the tears. When people come to you with tears and weeping, you have to look at the other side of the story too. Many times, what we'll do, and people are so good at this, that they will, because they don't like something or someone, then they go and spread stories about them. Or even religious people do this. Even if they don't spread a story, they'll put a doubt, plant a doubt, they'll ask a question, make a statement, do a little laugh, or something like that, and plant a doubt in the other person's heart. That is also considered backbiting. Yeah, that is considered backbiting because you have planted a doubt about somebody else in somebody's heart. And when that doubt is planted, that person will also turn away from the other person, and you are the cause of that. So you will have to answer on the day of judgment for that. So don't create dramas. You know, people are very good at creating little dramas, and then we take our dramas to other people because we want them to be a part of the drama. So the drama will become stronger. Don't instigate these things. Don't be a part of them, and recognize them. If it comes to you, say, you know, sorry, but I don't want anything to do with this. I'll move away from it. Don't become a part of that. One other thing that we learned, and we're going to learn today, which is going to be very apparent, is that one day you are the pigeon and one day you are the statue. That means, and this analogy is used because the pigeon comes and sits on the statue and does what it wants. The statue can't do anything. So one day you are the pigeon and the next day you are the statue. That means one day you might have it very good. You might have all the power in your hand, right? You might have the whip in your hand. You might be sitting on the chair, but the next day you'll be on the floor and you might be the ant, right? That will be trampled over. So be careful in your times because Allah changes these times amongst people. He changes them in our own lives. The seasons change in our own lives. So whichever time we are in, whether we're on top or we're at the bottom, then we have to realize that it's a time that Allah can change very quickly. If we're in a time of power, then Allah can change that time. And if we're in a time of weakness, and we're in a time of depression, or we're in a time where things are very difficult, Allah can change it. And Allah can change it in a matter of days, right? You read stories, we're reading this story, and you'll see in this story too, but we hear stories of everyday life, everyday people, and they'll tell you that in one day they were in so much difficulty, and then the next day they walk into something else, it's like walking from one door to another, and suddenly they walked into another room, and the scenery was so different. So literally in a matter of minutes and days, or even a day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change your life from good to bad or bad to good. So everything is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the tawakkul that we live with, that everything is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then today we're going to see, this is a lesson that we're going to start with. It is that no one can force you to do what you do not want to do. And this is the story where we're going to go right back into the scene where we left off yesterday, where Zuleika is calling Yusuf alayhi salam to sin. And she bolts all the doors. And he says, I seek refuge with Allah. Indeed, my caretaker has treated me honorably. Surely the oppressors will never succeed. So this is verse 23 where she says that, I can't have anything to do with this. I'm sorry. He says that, and uh, and he moves away. So verse 24, we're going to go into that. If you're following along in the Quran, it says, وَلَقَدْ حَمَّتْ بِهِ وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَنْ رَأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. She was determined to achieve her objectives with him, and he also would have intended the same had he not seen the proof of his Lord. That means, this verse means that, he was human, and she wanted to achieve her objectives with him, and he might have done that too had he not seen the proof of his Lord. And it said about the proof of this Lord, that what was it that it was the proof of the Lord? The proof of the Lord was that he was a prophet, and the entire Ummah is unanimously agreed that prophets cannot commit sin. Right? Allah has taken that ability away from them. So we know that Allah wouldn't have let him commit this sin, but it's also the proof of the Lord. That means he was a prophet, and so he saw the proof of his Lord. And in Ruhul Ma'ani, it says that um, Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anh said that the proof of his Lord was a vision. That means at that moment he had a vision of Yaqub alayhi salam, and he saw him before him. And in that vision, Yaqub alayhi salam, his father, struck him on the chest. I mean, he's bolted him awake. That, what are you doing? What will happen? And for pious people, sometimes this can happen, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will stop them. They might get very close to the sin, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will stop them from doing the sin. And it says that believers are also reminded by Allah when they intend to perpetrate a sin. The reminder is in the form of uneasiness and hesitance within the heart. It's the biggest reminder that when you get close to a sin, and this is a sign for us that when we get close to a sin, your heart will feel uneasy and you won't feel good. So listen to that instinct, because your instinct is telling you that is, your heart will tell you that we have a heart instinct and we have a stomach instinct. That means your emotions tell you and your heart tells you. So when your heart tells you this is not good, it doesn't feel right, then listen to that instinct, because it's telling you that you're about to step into something which isn't good. And everybody has this, and everybody can feel it. Sometimes we just obliterate it because we don't want to listen to it. So we ignore it. Now there's a hadith about this. It says, Nawas ibn Saman radiallahu ta'ala reports that the Holy Prophet sallallahu once cited an example to them. The example was of a straight road having two walls on either side, both of them having open doors with curtains drawn upon them. At the beginning of the road is another door from where a caller calls out, O people, travel the road, but do not be influenced by what is around you. At the end of the road is another door. Whenever a person tries to open one of the doors at the side, the caller calls out from that door saying, Shame on you. Do not open the door. If you open the door and enter into it, it will not be good for you. So the Prophet ﷺ then explained that the example of the straight road is that of Islam. So the example is the straight road is Islam. The walls on either side are the limits set by Allah. Remember, we were talking in Surah Al-Ma'idah, we talked a lot about the laws. These are the limits set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the open doors indicate Allah's prohibitions. That means the prohibitions are there, right? The temptations are right there. What Allah has made haram is right there. And there's just a curtain over it. That means if you wanted to step in, you could. So all these doors, which are open with a curtain on them, the prohibitions, they are there. And the caller at the beginning of the road is Allah's book. So that is Allah's book which guides you through. This is why your Quran is a guidance. Look at the analogy and the scenery that the Prophet ﷺ is painting to show us that we have the book to guide us on this road. We're going to go on this road, and this road is a road of Islam. But along the way, there will be many temptations. There will be many doors with many temptations, and each door will call out to you and say, "Come to me, come to me." But the Quran in your hand will say to you, "No, you cannot go through that door. Your knowledge will tell you, no, you cannot go through that door. Your iman will tell you, no, you can't go through that door either. So these things, your iman, your Quran, your knowledge of Allah are very, very important. Your knowledge of halal and haram, these are very important. These are known as the knowledge of the fara'id, which every child should learn. So every child, every adult, every Muslim has to know the knowledge of the fara'id. And fara'id basically are all the knowledges which are contained in the Quran. If you've ever wondered what makes something fard, for example, in salah there's some things which are fard, in wudu there are some things which are fard, and some things which are sunnah. So to understand that, you have to understand whatever is mentioned in the Quran, it will become fard. So if it's mentioned in the Quran, it's fard. If the Prophet ﷺ taught us, it is sunnah. If the Prophet ﷺ gave us an option to do it or not, it is mustahab or nafil. That means we have an option whether to do it or not. So these are the categories of our Sharia, and you should learn all of these too. Right. So Prophet ﷺ gave us this hadith to show us that we have these reminders, and in the journey of life there will be many doors and many temptations, but we've been given the tools with which to get out of the temptations. And so for every Muslim, this is a reminder. This verse is a reminder. And Yusuf alayhi salam must have also possessed the same. He had the same faculties, which told him that he should not step into this. And so we're getting back to the story now. And it says, in this manner, verse 24, it says, in this manner, our fate had decreed the matter. That means Allah had already decided that he was not going to fall into this sin. So that we averted evil and lewdness from him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He protected him from evil and lewdness. And by the way, when we read our du'as, the daily du'as, they protect us from these kind of things. They will protect us from all kinds of evil and lewdness. Indeed, he was from our sincere bondmen. That means he was from our sincere servants. Ibadana mukhlisin. So he was a sincere servant. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saves his sincere servants. Now, this verse also is a very important verse for our modern times, because um, the lesson that we learn from it is that um, people, being married, for example, or your family, your family status or being married will not save you against your desires. So if you think that, oh, I come from this family and it will save me, it's not going to save you. Or if a man or a woman thinks, oh, I'm married, so I can interact with the opposite gender, it doesn't matter. I can interact with women, a man might say, because I'm a married man. Or a married woman might say, oh, I can go and talk with these men because I'm a married woman. Your status, your marital status, is not going to save you, just as it did not save Zuleika. So this is a very important message for us, because we're living in a society where it's so open. We're living where in the name of modernity, everything is open, and people are mingling, in our weddings, in our workplaces, everywhere there is free mixing. Even in our masjids, there's free mixing. So this is a very big thing that the Prophet ﷺ taught us, but we keep overstepping those boundaries. But this verse is telling us that nothing, no status of yours, no knowledge, no education, no willpower is going to save you. If Allah wants you to fall into it, you will fall. So this is why you have to take the precautions and stay away from all these kinds of evils, especially free mixing, etc. I will come back to that as well. And so what they did is they both raced for the door, and she tore his shirt from the back. Then they encountered her master at the door. She said, the only penalty for him who intended evil with your wife is that he be imprisoned, or some other torturous punishment. So what they both, when he runs away from her, and then she runs behind him. And when they get to the door, and like we mentioned before, maybe they were living in a palace, right? He was a wazir, he was the aziz of the time, so he a very important man. So there may have been many, many doors, and so when he runs from these doors, then they get to a door where they encounter the master at the door. So the master is at the door, he's about to come in, and he sees these two running, and he asks what it is. So before he can even say anything, she says, that the only penalty for him who intended evil with your wife is that he be imprisoned or some other torture punishment. So before he can even say anything, she's stating her innocence. She's trying to say, "Oh, I'm very innocent, and this man tried to entrap me, right? He was trying to seduce me." And so Yusuf alayhi salam said, "It is she who tried to seduce me to attain her motive." So Yusuf alayhi salam straight away he says that she was trying to do it. So Yusuf alayhi salam states his innocence. So both of them are saying that they're innocent. Now what to do? So a witness from her family testified by saying, if his shirt is torn from the front, then she is truthful, and he is from the liars. However, if his shirt is torn from the back, then she is lying, and he is from the truthful. So now there is a wise person in the house of the Aziz, and he says, he gives the Aziz talks to him, he explains the situation, and so he says that he looks into the situation and he says, let's look at the shirt that Yusuf is wearing. If it's torn from the front, then then he is guilty, and if it's torn from the back, then she is guilty. Now you have to imagine this to know why this would be true. And so they examine the shirt and they see that it is torn from the back. And so um, he says, Yusuf alayhi salam, if his shirt is torn from the front, then he is truthful and he's from the liars. So, however, if his shirt is torn from the back, then she is lying and he is from the truthful. When he saw, that means Aziz, he saw that his shirt was torn from the back, he said, this is definitely from the trickery of you women. Your trickery is indeed very dangerous. Right? So the Aziz said this. And O Yusuf, then he says to he says to Yusuf, O Yusuf, he overlooked this. That means overlook this situation because this is wife who is there, and on the other hand, it is Yusuf whom he respects so much. So he says to Yusuf alayhi salam, overlook it, and then, O woman, he says to his wife, seek forgiveness for your sin. You are truly of the sinners. So Aziz knows he has beyond a doubt who the guilty person is, and so this is what he says to each one of them. Now it says that um, about what the Aziz said, that he said about, and this is mentioned in the Quran, so this is a message for us too. When he says that this is definitely from the trickery of you women. So we see that the trickery of the women is the Prophet ﷺ said, I have not seen anything addressing some women. He said, I have not seen anything more destructive to the intelligence of a wise man than you women. So women have this ability to lead and entrap a man until they take his intelligence away, right? They take his intelligence, and we see this. This is a very common example. So women have this power to do that. And then it says, fear Allah. Prophet ﷺ said, fear Allah and fear the trial of women. This is another hadith from Muslim. The first one was from Bukhari. This is a hadith from Muslim. It says that fear, uh, fear Allah and fear the trial of women. For verily, the first cause of corruption among the Bani Israel was because of women. Right, the first cause of corruption, and maybe Prophet ﷺ was pointing to this incident because this is the beginning of Bani Israel. Remember that, like we mentioned yesterday, that the 12 sons of Yaqub alayhi salam, including Yusuf alayhi salam, these are the 12 sons, and they will become known as the 12, 12 tribes of Bani Israel. And the tribes become significant because in Musa alayhi salam's time, you'll see that the 12 tribes drink from different waters as well. And these are all the sons of Yaqub alayhi salam. So maybe the Prophet was doing ishara towards this. But he said, fear Allah and fear the trial of women. Right. Okay. And then there is an incident about the child that spoke. It said that it was a child that spoke and gave this evidence. So let's just look at that. It says, Hakimi reports in the Mustadrak from Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas that the Prophet ﷺ narrated the following incident to them. He told them that when he ascended the heavens during the ascension Mi'raj, he smelt a most beautiful scent. You know the hadith of the Mi'raj is a very beautiful hadith when the Prophet ﷺ went to the heavens. So uh, before he got to before he got to Jerusalem, when they were flying over, he smelt when they went over Egypt. He smelt a very beautiful smell. And when he asked the angels accompanying him from where the scent came, they said that it was from the woman who used to comb the hair of Fir'aun's family. So once she dropped the comb while combing the hair of Fir'aun's daughter. Thereupon she said, Bismillah. The girl asked her whose name was she had taken, and why did she take the name? Why did she not take the name of her father Pharaoh instead? She replied, I have taken the name of the one who is my Lord, your Lord, and the Lord of your father. When Fir'aun's daughter threatened to report that matter to her father, the lady permitted her to do so. When Fir'aun learnt of the incident, he summoned the lady with her children. When she appeared before Fir'aun, she asked that a request of hers be fulfilled. When Pharaoh asked what the request was, she replied that she wanted her bones and the bones of her children to be buried, and Fir'aun agreed to this. Thereafter, he began to kill every one of her children and cast their bodies in a pit or in a fire. And in some places, it said that uh, he heated up a huge wok of oil, boiling oil, and he threw each child into that boiling oil until all the flesh and everything burnt off them. Only the bones were left. Eventually, only the smallest child was left. This child was still feeding off the mother. This little child spoke to the mother, saying, "Oh, my mother, be patient because you are on the truth." This child was then disposed of with the mother. So the child spoke and said, "Oh, mother, be patient because we're on the truth. Don't worry. They're going to put me now in the hot oil, and you will come after that, but do not be afraid." So after relating this account, the Holy Prophet ﷺ said, throughout history there have been only 4 infants who spoke in their infancy. The first was this very child. That means this child um, in Yusuf Salam's time, it was a child of one of the relatives of Zuleika. This is the child who spoke and said that they should do this. And the second was the witness for Sayyidina Yusuf salam. um, Actually, the first child is actually the one that is mentioned in this story of the Fir'aun's daughter's maidservant. And the second child was the witness for Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. That's the one that we see in this story that we're talking about, this surah that we're talking about. The third was the one who testified the innocence of the monk Juraj. Now, this is a story that is mentioned in the hadith. And the fourth was Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam because he spoke in childhood too. So there are 4 children who spoke when they were infants. Now, let's get back to the story. So, verse 30, some women of the town said, the minister's wife attempts to seduce her slave to fulfill her motives. So now the gossip spread, as it does. And the women of the town, her friends, her so called friends, they all started to gossip about her. And they said that she has fallen in love with a slave. She's infatuated with a slave. So they said, love has certainly overwhelmed her. Indeed, we deem her to be in manifest error. So they started to blame her. So they were talking like this. They were saying that she is the one who is in error because she's a woman of such a high status. And now she has fallen in love with her servant. And, what kind of a woman does this? And so they were spreading all kinds of gossip about her. When she heard of their plot, she sent for them and prepared a meeting place for them. So then she heard that they were plotting as well. So they weren't just gossiping, but they actually had a plot, and that means they were planning to do something. They were planning. They were planning to bring her down. So when she heard of all this gossip, and when she said, "Okay, I better do something about this," and what she does is that she prepared a meeting for them. So she prepared a banquet for them. Now, in the olden days, even today we sit like this, that we sit in long lines and facing each other. So what she did is she had them sitting in a long line in a long hall facing each other, and she put cushions down and tables down, and the women were facing, and in between there was a space, so there was like a walkway in between where the servants would come and place their food in front of them. So the verse says this: when she heard of their plot, she sent for them and prepared a meeting place for them, setting cushions there. She gave each of them a knife and then told Yusuf, "Come out before them." So she says, "Now you come out." So they were having this long repast. They were eating like you do in a party, that you have certain dishes and then you pause and then you eat again. So they were eating like this. So in the middle of the meal, she gives them a knife so they can cut their food. And the Mufassirin has said that most likely they were at the point where um, they were eating fruits, and some have even mentioned um, oranges, because the word muttaqan, it can also be translated as an orange. So maybe she gave them knives to cut the oranges. And so, and then she told them, whilst with the knives in their hands and they're about to eat the fruit, she tells Yusuf to come out into the hall. So basically, there's a walkway, and you can understand this um, from runways, the modern runways, that they walk from one side to the other. So she asks Yusuf that come out before them. So she orders him that just walk across. And when they saw him, so he makes a walk, he comes out and he's walking past. When they saw him, they were taken aback. So the verse says they were taken aback and they cut their hands and exclaimed, Allah is pure. This cannot be a human. He is surely a noble angel. Now, as we know, because his looks, Yusuf al-Islam was so handsome that his looks are legendary. Right? He had half of the beauty of the world, and so when he walks out, then the women are so uh, they are like mesmerized. Yeah, they don't even know what they're doing, and they are so mesmerized by what they see that instantly from their mouths they say that this can't be a human. He's too good looking to be a human. It has to be an angel. And um, so they, and what they do is they cut their hands instead of cutting the fruit. They because they're looking at him and they're so mesmerized, they cut their fingers. And this is a very famous example. And she said, so Zuleika says, "This is what you was criticizing me for. Indeed, I attempted to seduce him to achieve my motives, but he escaped. If he does not do as I command him, he shall certainly be imprisoned, and he will definitely become of those humiliated." So now she becomes so bold because she sees that the women now they understand. So how can they gossip about me? Now you know why I am like this, why why I have fallen into this trap. Because look at him, yes. So she's saying this, and um, with all the women there, then she makes another statement. She makes a bold statement, and she says that if he does not do as I command him, then surely he will be imprisoned and humiliated. That means now I will attempt to seduce him again, and if he doesn't become mine, you have all seen what the matter is. And if he doesn't become mine, she says she makes a claim that he will be imprisoned. So this is again, this is a reference to the plot that we were just talking about women too. That when they plot and they want to achieve something, then they will go and make such plots and such things that the mind will become boggled as to how they will do it. Right. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had bestowed Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam with exceptional beauty. We already know that. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam confirmed this when he met him, when he went on the ascension, when he went for Mi'raj, that he said, indeed, he has been conferred half of the beauty of the world. So the we know that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually saw him as well, and he confirmed it that he was given half of the beauty. And so Yusuf alayhi salam, he says, this is what he says in the verse 33. Yusuf alayhi salam prayed, "O my Lord, قال رب السجن أحب إلي مما يدعونني إليه." That he prays, "Oh my Lord, the prison is dearer to me than that towards which these women call me." That means I'd rather be in prison than falling into their sin. If you do not avert their plot from me, I shall incline towards them and become of the ignorant. So he prays to Allah that Allah, all these women are after me now. not just one woman. There's so many women of all that high class society. All of them are after me. Now I'm like, I am really in a bind. So you have to help me. So he prays to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he says that in this prayer, he actually says that, prison would be better for me than falling into their plot. But I will, and he says that even I could become inclined towards them and become of the ignorant. So his Lord accepted his prayer and averted their plot from him. Undoubtedly, he is all hearing, all knowing. Then, after reviewing the signs, it occurred to them that they should imprison him for a while. So, Yusuf al-Islam first makes this dua, and we are told about this. This is a very important learning point here. Right. Allama Qurtubi has reported that when Sayyidina Yusuf al-Islam made the above dua to Allah, Allah told him, "O Yusuf, you have yourself asked to be imprisoned. If you had asked for safety, I would have granted it to you." It is learned from here that a person should never ask Allah to resolve his problem in a specific manner. He should merely request Allah to deliver him from the problem, and Allah would do so in the most befitting manner. When a person presents a solution to Allah, he could be placing himself in undue difficulty. So it means here that because Yusuf alayhi salam said those words that prison is preferred to me, then Allah gave him that solution. Had he left it open, Allah could have just taken him out of the problem and he wouldn't have gone into prison. So we learn from this that when we are asking for a solution, we shouldn't present the solution and say, um, sometimes you hear people talking and they will talk like this. They will say, if I just come out of this problem, and then I don't care if if I have to live alone, and if I'm like very poor, or if I'm like this, naudzubillah. They will say words like this. So they are getting out of one problem and they're getting into another problem. So don't say words which will bind you into a situation. Again, this is the lesson of the tongue. Be careful what you say. Be careful what you ask for. Even don't say words which, when you are angry and say, I don't care if this happens. Because what if it does happen? Right? What if Allah makes it happen? Then you'll be in another problem. So be careful what the tongue takes out. And be careful that you don't curse anybody. Be careful that you don't say angry words. Be careful that you don't even say angry words against yourself. Be careful that you don't make dua to get out of one problem to go into another problem to go into another problem. Again, it's all about the tongue. And this is, we should, when we make dua, we should ask Allah that, Allah, relieve me from this difficulty and relieve me in the best way that you only you know how. Because Allah's methods will be very different from our methods. So don't take a plan to Allah and say, do it according to this plan, because that plan could get you into more trouble. Let Allah's plan work out. Again, this goes back to tawakkul, how we tawakkul means how we trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it goes back to La ilaha illallah. And there's a hadith related to this. Sayyidina Anas reports that the Holy Prophet ﷺ once visited an ailing Muslim whose voice had become extremely weak and his body had become as frail as a fledgling. The Holy Prophet ﷺ recommended that he continues making supplication, dua to Allah. Thereupon he said that, thereupon he said, he always prayed to Allah to grant him the punishment for his sins in this world rather than the next. So this man is saying that I always used to pray that Allah don't punish me in the hereafter, punish me in this world. Na'udhu. Hearing this, the Holy Prophet ﷺ explained, Subhanallah, what resistance do you have against punishment? That means how did you even make this dua? How strong are you to go through Allah's punishments? Why did you rather not pray this? O Allah, grant me the good of this world and the good of the hereafter and save me from the punishment of the fire. And this is from Muslim. This hadith is from Muslim. So the dua that Prophet ﷺ teaches him, he says, why didn't you say, ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. And this is a dua from the Quran, and almost everybody will know this dua, but because this is a jami' dua, this is one of the duas which has everything in it, where we say, Allah, give me all the good of this world and all the good of the hereafter, and save me from the punishment of the fire. So it says that we should not ask, even in our du'as, we should be careful what we ask for. Do not ask for difficulties. Don't ask for punishment. Don't say, Allah, punish me in this world. Be careful with your words. Words are very real. We don't understand the reality of words. but words are very, very real. And sometimes we make our own predictions with our own words. So don't even say demeaning things about yourself, even if you're feeling them like, oh, I'm so dumb, or oh, I did this, it's so stupid, or I'm like this or I'm like that. Don't say that those kind of words because you could be making a prediction for yourself. Now we're in the prison, so Yusuf, uh, wazir, the Aziz, he consults his people and he says there's a big fitna spreading now. The women are all involved in this. First, it was just in my home. Now it's in the community. The women are all involved, and this poor man, they've entrapped him. He hasn't done anything wrong, and they just want excitement. So they've made this whole big story up. Now what do we do? So he consults with his wazirs, and they deem it. They say, okay, for a while, let's put him in the prison. And they say that this would be the better thing to do until all of this dies down. So let's put him in the prison. So Yusuf alayhi salam is put into the prison. Verse 36, two youths enter the prison with him. One of them said, indeed, I see myself in a dream squeezing wine. The other said, I see myself carrying bread upon my head from which birds are eating. They requested, informers of the interpretation, we truly dream you to be of the righteous. Now it's said that these two were new captives who had entered the jail. So Yusuf al-Islam went in, and these two new captives came in. And one of them was, he used to serve drinks. So he was a wine bearer to the king, and the other one was his baker. Now they had both been bribed by an outside person to poison the king. So uh, when they were brought in front of the king, when they came to serve the bread and the wine, so uh, oh, the wine bearer, he decides that he doesn't want to be a part of the plot, and so he tells the king not to eat the bread, right, because it's poisoned. So then the king, the baker, in retaliation, tells the king not to drink because it's also poison. So the king tells the servers of the drink to drink the wine, and he does that without heavy hesitation and is unaffected. And then the king tells the baker, okay, you eat the bread, but he flatly refuses. And then the bread is given to an animal, and the animal dies. Then the king orders that both of them are put them both in prison pending investigation. We're going to investigate this matter. So both of these two end up in the end up in the prison, and they both have a dream. And the dream is that one of them says that, so the one who served the wine, the drinks, said, indeed, I see myself in a dream squeezing grapes to make wine. The other, the baker, said, I see myself carrying bread upon my head from which birds are eating. Relating their dreams to Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, they asked him, inform us of the interpretation. We truly deem you to be of the righteous. So they tell them these dreams that they have. So Yusuf alayhi salam replied, I shall inform you of the interpretation before the food provided for you arrives. That means um, I will give you the interpretation, right? Because they see that Yusuf al-Islam looks like a noble man, and he's also from a high society. They can see from his clothing and his demeanor that he looks like a very learned man. So they tell him these dreams. So Yusuf al-Islam, he says, I will tell you the dream, but first I have to tell you something else. And the time that he gives them, he says, before your next meal arrives. When he talks about the food, he's talking about the meal. He says, before your next meal arrives, I will give you the interpretation. This is from the knowledge that my Lord has taught me, right? And this is because I have the knowledge. He's saying that this is the knowledge is from the knowledge that Allah has taught me. So now he's going to give them dawah. And look at the words that he's using. First, he tells them that this is the knowledge that my Lord has taught me. I have discarded the religion of those people who do not believe in Allah and who reject the hereafter. I have adopted the creed of my forefathers Ibrahim, Ishaq, and Yaqub. It does not befit us to ascribe any partners to Allah. This is from the favors upon us and upon all people, but most people are ungrateful. So he gives them dawah first, and from this we learn that we can give dawah anywhere. Dawah means an invitation to Allah. So we can give a dawah to people anywhere in the world, um, or any place or any situation that we are in. Like for example, yesterday I was reading about a woman who, in some certain countries, you know that the lockdown is over. In some certain states here, lockdown is over too, and people are preparing to get out of the lockdown. So one woman, she says that after the lockdown, she went to the a store, and she was a Muslim woman, and she was wearing a hijab and a niqab. So she was wearing the mask. So she said that, I was I was surprised that everybody was wearing a mask in the store now, because this is part of the deal that you have to go out with masks. So she said everybody was wearing masks. Now I did my shopping, this woman says, and I went to uh, um, the till, and the woman kept looking at me, and so uh, she wanted to say something, and she was hesitating. So this woman says, I told her that, I greeted her and I said that, do you want to say something? So she says, she said, no, it's okay. So then she asks her again. She says, no, tell me, what do you want to say? So she says, would you be able to give me one of your niqabs that you wear? So the woman was taken aback. She said, why do you want one of those? So she said, well, your niqab is much better than these masks that everybody's wearing. It looks so much better. And you guys know how to wear it. So I'd like to get one of those. So she said, yeah, I'll bring you one. So she says, can I have a hijab as well? Because it looks nice with the hijab. So then the woman, she told her, this woman, she's relating. So she says, why do you want to wear the hijab? So she said, well, it looks nice with the niqab will look nice with the hijab. That's why I want to wear it. And she says, you women, you always wear this and you always covered up, so you're protected from so many things. So it's almost like reverse dawah. This woman is the clerk is giving her dawah. Anyway, they have this conversation. So in the end, the woman says, "Do you want to become a Muslim?" So she says, "No, not right now." So you can see that this is that already the interaction has started, right? The interaction of a dawah has started. So Yusuf al-Islam is showing us that even in the prison, before he gives the interpretation, he's going to give these people dawah. So this is a big lesson to us that the people that we interact with, if they ask us why we're doing a certain thing, or we just, why you're not eating, for example, if you're going back to work, why you're not eating, you give dawah, you tell them that you're fasting and you fast for these reasons. So already that becomes a dawah to them. And remember that when we give dawah, whether they accept it or they don't, that is up to Allah. But we have to do our part, because that person on the day of judgment could say that, my co-worker, she worked with me for 15 years, but she never once did she tell me about Islam. Never once did she tell me about the beauty of the Quran. So they will stand up and say these things about us. So we have to do our part. This is important in terms of dawah. Right, so then verse 39, Yusuf salam gives the interpretation. He says, "O my two prison companions, are numerous gods better to Allah, or the one Almighty? Besides him, you worship only names that you and your forefathers have named without any revealed warrant from Allah. Decisions rest only with Allah. He has commanded that He only be worshipped. He is the right. This is the right religion, deen, but most people know it not." So before that, he's still giving them dawah, and then he says, he gives the interpretation. He says, "Ya sahibu sijn, O my two prison companions, one of you, as for one of you, he will serve wine to his master." That means he's going to get out of here, and he is going to be declared not guilty, and he will continue with his job. وَأَمَّا الْآخِرُ, and the next one, he's going to be crucified. That means he's going to be taken to the gallows, and that was a punishment at the time. And then the birds will eat from his head. Remember, he's seen the dream that there was bread on his head and the birds were eating from it. So now the birds will actually eat from him, from his flesh. So that was the interpretation. And the decision has been passed regarding the matter you have inquired from me. That means you're asking me about this matter, but it's already been decreed by Allah because it's been shown in this dream. So He gives them that interpretation. And then Yusuf al-Islam tells the one that he had anticipated would be freed, mention me to your master. That means he's saying that, as I have done you this favor, so when you go out, make sure that you mention me to the king, so that he knows that I am languishing in here, I am innocent, and I am languishing in this prison. And from this we learn too that there are many, many people who are unjustly in prison. Like, this is an age-old thing too, that there are many innocent people in prison as well, and they just languish there for years and years and years. And so Yusuf al-Islam is telling him this. However, Shaitan caused him to forget mentioning him to his master, and Yusuf remained in prison for a few more years. And it says, فَلَبِثَ فِي السِّجْنِ بِضْعَ سِنِينَ. So Shaitan caused that man to forget this whole incident, and that he should remember him or talk about Yusuf al-Islam to the king. He forgets everything. And this is the nature of humans as well, that we forget the favors people have done on us too. And so Yusuf al-Islam remained in prison for a few years. And this is such an important verse because, look at how casually it says he's just bid a sinin, means for a few years. He was just there for a few years, right? And this was a decree of Allah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had intended. It was Allah's mission that he should be in prison for that long. And so he was just there for a few more years. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plans things for us. We're going back to Al-Qadr, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, people will say, why is this happening to me? Why is it taking so long? So many years I've suffered this. What is going on? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan is very unique. Yes, if he could keep Yusuf alayhi salam languishing in the prison just for so many years, and who knows, maybe his whole youth, from 20s to 30s, the best time of his life was spent in the prison. Who knows, right? Who knows how many years it was and how long he was in that prison. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us this, and it's a very significant verse for us to understand certain things. Right? And then moving to another scene now. It's by the way, it's mentioned in the tafsir also that it was 7 to 12 years that he was in prison. That few years means 7 to 12 years. That's a very long time that he was in prison. And another scene now where the king sees a dream. Now the king sees a dream. So he says, I see in a dream 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 lean cows, and 7 green ears of corn, and others that are dry. O my counselors, furnish an interpretation for my dream, if you are indeed able to interpret dreams. They replied, they are only confused dreams. We have no knowledge concerning the interpretation of confused dreams. Right? So the king has a dream, and in it he sees, in the tafsir it says that, of Ibn Kathir, it says that he sees the river Nile. Now the river Nile is very important to Egypt, because it brought the water, brought them their crops, because every year it would come and it would overflow into the land. That this river would overflow, and from it their crops would grow. And it's not just in Egypt, but it goes into Africa. So this river Nile is a very important river. But he sees in his dream that uh, where the water is, it's dried up, it's become mud. And then he sees there's 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 thin cows, which is, if you were to see that, it looks like a very funny dream, a confused dream. And 7 green ears of corn, and then others that are dry. So he says in the morning he calls all his counselors and into his court, like all his advice givers, and he says, tell me what this dream means. So the counselors, they think about it, they call the best interpreters, the wisest men, and everybody is confused and scratching their heads. They said, it looks like a very confused dream, we don't know what it means. And so then the release of the true convicts, that means the wine bearer, recalling a considerable period, he remembers his time in jail. He says, I shall inform you of the interpretations, so send me to fetch an interpreter. O Yusuf, most truthful, inform us regarding 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 lean cows, and of corn and other save it green ears that are dry, so that I may return to the people, that they may be enlightened. He replied, so Yusuf al-Islam gives the interpretation. He replied, you will farm for 7 consecutive years. Leave whatever crops you harvest in their ears, except that you require for eating. So he tells them that a drought is going to come. The interpretation of this dream is that a drought is about to come, and they will, for 7 years, they're going to have the 7 fat cows, they indicate 7 good years. That means they'll have plenty of crops. But he's telling them that whatever crops you harvest in that time, in your good years, you should leave them in their ears, so that the vermin can't get to them. That means leave them so that you can preserve them, and only use the ones that you require. Because thereafter 7 difficult years will follow, that will consume all you would have stored for them, except the little bit that you leave. So those 7 lean years, you will have to eat out of the 7 fat years. So consume it. That means manage your system. There's a way to manage this system. That's what this dream means. Thereafter, a year will follow in which abundant rains will fall for the people and they will distill juices. So the end of this verse is that after these 7 lean years, a year will come when there will be so much, so the rivers will rise again, the water will come, and there will be so many fruits that you will squeeze the fruits. I mean, you get juices out of the fruits. That's how much abundance there will be. And so uh, the wine bearer goes back to the king and he tells him about the interpretation. The king said, "Bring him to me." When the messenger came to Yusuf alayhi salam, he told him, "Return to your master and ask him what is the condition of the women who cut their hands. Indeed, my lord is well aware of their plot." Right. So Yusuf alayhi salam, when he says that when the wine bearer goes back or the soldiers go back to get Yusuf alayhi salam out of the prison, he says, "No, I don't come out like this. I have to come out innocent. That means my case has to be tried, because if I come out, it will look like I'm guilty." And then he was a prophet, so he has to show his innocence as well. We learn a very big lesson from this too, that if you haven't done anything wrong, then you have to prove your innocence as far as you can go. This is important. And so he says to them, "Go back to the king and ask him that what is the condition of the women who cut their hands." That means go and remind him about this whole incident that happened, this whole thing that these women made up, and why I was thrown into prison. So indeed, Allah is well aware of their plot. So the king calls all those women, he calls the women, including Zuleika, to his court. And he asks them, "What is your tale when you attempted to seduce Yusuf to appease your motives?" They replied, "Allah is pure. We do not know of any evil in him." So the women reply, they reply and they say, it's a long time has passed, but they remember the incident. They say, "We don't know any evil of him. Nothing happened like that." So the wife of the minister said, "The truth is now out. I attempted to seduce him to realize my motives, and he is of the truthful." So even Zuleika speaks the truth, and she says, "The truth is out now. I attempted to seduce him, and I realized my motives, and he is of the truthful." So, and she admits to what she has done. This was so that he may know that I did not betray him in his absence. And without doubt, Allah does not promote the plot of betrayers. So uh, uh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also absolving Yusuf alayhi salam, and he's saying that Allah absolved him, right? He was not betrayed, and Allah does not promote the plot of betrayers. That means at some point the betrayers will always lose, right? So there's important lessons to be learned here, and we're going to close with the mention of Zuleika. It is said that. This is the last time that she's mentioned in this story, because we will leave her in the story here now. Right. So it is said that uh, when she came into the court of uh, when she came into the court of the king, then she had changed so much, right? That she had changed, and she had become like her beauty had gone, and she uh, also spoke the truth, right? She spoke the truth here. And it said that after this, Yusuf alayhi salam didn't have anything to do with her. In the tafsir, one version is that he didn't have anything to do with her. Another version is that she became a believer. She believed in Yusuf alayhi salam's religion because he gave dawah to her. And then she asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to restore her beauty, and then she married Yusuf alayhi salam. So one version of it says that as well. Wallahu alam. But inshallah, we will continue with the story, and we learn a lot of things from this story. It would be good if you could go back and look at the verses yourself and internalize the lessons that we learn, because really, if we were to just internalize these lessons that we learn, we would become so rich, right? Because these are treasures that Allah has given to us. And our responsibility, our treasure is not just that we look at it and we say, "Oh, this is a treasure, this is wonderful, this is amazing." but that we try to take that treasure into our life, because that's what it's there for. The Quran is to be interacted with and to take the treasure. So when you come across the treasure, take the treasure. And taking the treasure is really internalizing the lesson and then trying to practice that lesson. Okay. So assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.